crown from an elite nomadic cemetery.
Most of these treasures were thought to have been stolen, lost, or even destroyed during the decades of war and unrest in Afghanistan. And they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for a few Afghan officials who risked imprisonment and even execution when they smuggled them out of the museum into a secret vault where they lay hidden until 2004.
The curators hope their display will change the public's perception of the war-torn country.
This exhibition is, I think, in some way contributing to the rehabilitation of the country in terms of foreigners' perspective of Afghanistan, but also in the way that Afghans understand their own history and culture.
And that culture needs to be protected. 70% of artifacts from Kabul's museum were lost to looters. Some are trickling back into the rebuilt National Museum, and soon these treasures will also return home. Charlie Angela, Al Jazeera, London.
All right, that's it. You're up to date with the latest news from here in Europe, so it's back now to Doha.
One of Tunisia's main opposition parties has been legalized after being banned for more than 2 decades. The Islamist Nahda party is led by Rashid Ghannouchi, who returned from exile in London in January after the former president Zain al-Abidine bin Ali was ousted. The former president had branded the party as an Islamist terrorist group. Meanwhile, there are problems for Tunisia's interim government after a leading opposition figure resigned. Regional Development Minister Ahmed Najib Shebbi says he isn't happy with the choice of the newly appointed Prime Minister. Shebbi is the 3rd minister to leave the interim government on Tuesday and the 6th since the weekend. Well, staying in Tunisia, rights group Amnesty International has reported human rights abuses during the revolution there. It finds Tunisian authorities used excessive force, including lethal fire, in trying to stem anti-government protests. And it says torture and other ill treatment appear to be systematic nationwide. It calls on Tunisian authorities to immediately end impunity for such abuses. Well, Saeed Haddadi is a researcher at Amnesty International. He is in Tunis now as part of the delegation and joins us live from there. Thanks a lot for joining us, Mr. Haddadi. I haven't read your full report, but I've read the press release. What I found interesting was that the research for this was done between the 14th and 23rd of January. Are you convinced that you had enough time to do exhaustive research to get all your facts in order?
We certainly have enough time to look into the pattern of human rights violations that happened, and we have consistent testimonies of people, relatives of the victims, as well as victims, those who were injured during the protest. And I think we've made conclusions. We come to the conclusion that the security forces during the unrest have used excessive use of force, including lethal force, as well as systematic use of beating and torture and other ill treatment of those that are detained during the demonstrations. We have also cases of people who have been shot dead straight into in the neck or the head or on the back, which shows that even the use of fire has been used illegally.
This public order brigade seems to come under particular scrutiny by your reports. It seems as if many of them still have their jobs and are still part of the security forces. So how likely is it that they will face accountability?
Well, it's given the changes that are happening in Tunisia, that's one of the main calls we're making on the Tunisian authorities, because the security forces has been afforded impunity for so many years, and there are so many cases of where security forces have been used, have committed serious violations and have ended up enjoying complete impunity. And now where the call on the Tunisian authorities is to bring those who are responsible for these violations into justice and make them accountable, because that's the only way justice can be done and reparation can be achieved for the families of the victims. Making this call is important because the security forces have been used as the main, one of the main tools used by the President Ben Ali when he was in power to suppress and repress human rights violations and the opposition.
You say this was a tool by President Ben Ali, but were you able to categorically tell whether these human rights abuses were specifically ordered by him?
Well, he as the head of the state and a man who was running the country, I think we have consistent testimonies, not only from the unrest that happened in Tunisia, but from the various reports that Amnesty International has carried out in the past, and the research we did on the country for several decades. We know that the Tunisian authorities and the security forces have been responsible for huge human rights violations, and that's why we call on the Tunisian authorities now to make to amend the abuse that happened in the past. And one way of amending them is to bring those responsible to justice, and also to start thinking of reform in the state, the security apparatus.
And to break that sort of culture of impunity, the new Tunisian government has actually said that they've brought about this new Human Rights Commission in the country. How convinced are you that will be credible?
Well, that's establishing a Human Rights Commission to look into the violations that happened during the unrest is a welcome step, and we hope that it will lead to opening the way for other commissions with larger mandates. At the moment, we are not very clear as to the mandate of the current commission, the commission headed by Mr. Boudherbala. So it's very, at the moment we want to know more about the mandate of the commission, the tools that it's given, the methodology that's been using, and how its conclusions will be used. But our main recommendations for the commission is to look into all the human rights violations that were committed during the unrest, but also to make other recommendations into the way its conclusions must be used.
Saeed Haddadi, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. Saeed Haddadi from Amnesty International in Tunis. Now, an Indian court has sentenced 11 men to death for an arson attack on a train that left dozens dead and led to religious riots. Another 20 people were jailed for life. 59 passengers, most of them Hindu, died in the 2002 train fire in Gujarat state. Politicians blamed Muslims, sparking riots that left up to 2,000 dead. Officials compiling India's census are struggling to put an accurate figure on the huge number of homeless people in the country. Prerna Suri has this report.
This is how India is trying to identify its homeless. Late into the night, government employees quiz this girl about what she does, who's in her family, and which God she believes in. Once they tick all the boxes, the information will then be used to assess her most pressing needs. It's an ambitious task, and it's happening as the country's census comes to a close. We've kept the homeless on the last day as we don't want to replicate data. They frequently move, so we wanted an accurate figure. Hari's lived his entire life on the streets of New Delhi and sells balloons for a living. He's been asked these questions many times in the past. But has life changed for him?
They've come here before, but what's the point? I still can't send my kids to school or get a decent job.
Nobody really knows how many homeless there are in India. Figures are sketchy and unreliable.